YouTube family, hope everybody's sheltering in place and not losing their minds. It has, as of this recording, it's come to my attention that, according to his wife, the great John Prine is double pneumonia in both of his lungs and still on a ventilator. We keep him in our thoughts and prayers. He's the Hank Williams of my generation, maybe, or even those a few years older. Not a song he has written didn't bring me to tears. I've sung and performed so many Prine songs when I was playing in crowds that didn't even know who he was, and those songs even managed to touch folks that had never heard of him before. An Appalachian Greyhound Station, a young girl sits in a family way. Goodbye, brother. Tell Mom I love her. Tell all the others I'll write someday. From teenage lovers to unwed mothers held under cover like some bad dream. While unwed fathers, they can't be bothered. They run like water from a mountain stream. What am I playing today? Well, I'll tell you about it. I never think that you should judge a guitar company as a whole. You should make a decision on them based on individual instruments. Everybody makes a dud from time to time. Everybody makes a piece of junk. Everybody makes something that's just stellar. And I will say, based on many years of owning many of them, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Epiphones. Do their Les Pauls sound good? Yeah, they sound okay. If you can't afford a Gibson Les Paul, you want the Les Paul sound, there's nothing wrong with an Epiphone. There are some other choices that I prefer, but there's nothing wrong with an Epiphone. I'm not bashing the company. I have owned Epiphone Les Pauls. The necks on them drive me nuts, so I've gotten rid of them. Just about every Epiphone I've owned, I've not held on to very long. Before I had a real Gibson Hummingbird, I had the Epiphone Hummingbird, several versions of them, the last one being the Hummingbird Pro. They sounded fine plugged in. Once again, they didn't sound very good acoustically, and sounded good plugged in, didn't sound very good acoustically, and I never got along with the necks. I don't know why, something about the neck profile. Now, there are some exceptions. The Korean-made Epiphones of some years ago made in the Peerless plant were just absolutely phenomenal. I have one right here. This is a, if I can dig it out, this is a Riviera. And it's a project that I'm working on currently. I love the neck. I love everything about the way it feels and love the way they sound. So I have no problem. But it's an old Peerless plant model, not one of the current manufactured Rivieras. I have a B.B. King Lucille from the Peerless plant that is a great guitar. So I'm not knocking all Epiphones by any reason. But what seldom happens in Gibson Company stuff is to go back to something I love, and that's a narrow neck, like the mid to late 60s Gibsons. Here's somewhere they did it back in 2018, and they did it with this. This is the Epiphone Texan Peter Frampton model, and they did some things to actually make it a lot like Peter's old Epiphone that he wrote so many big hits on. That he received, I think about 68, he says, 67, 68, and wrote a lot of hits on. Now, what they did was made a skinny neck on the thing. The nut here is 1.62, as opposed to 1.68, 1.69, the wider necks. The neck's thin all the way up, like it was a 1960s, mid-60s Epiphone or Gibson. And that just makes it comfortable as can be. It's also from the Masterbuilt line, not made in China, made in Indonesia, so it's all solid wood, solid Sitka spruce tops, solid mahogany back and sides, so it sounds really good. It's got a LR Baggs pickup in it for plugging in, but acoustically, it sounds so much better than anything below the Masterbuilt line. The Elitist series of some years ago were magnificent guitars. Can't knock them at all. That's why I can't say something bad about Epiphone, when in essence I've had some bad Epiphones. There's some fine stuff out there. Most of the master-built acoustics are great guitars. Does a master-built J45 sound like a real J45, a Gibson? No. Does it have its own sound that's still woody and transparent and rings and has that kind of guttural slope shoulder? Yes, it does. It does have all that. So, can't afford a Gibson. There's nothing wrong with a master built. But when you get down to their Pro Series and less of acoustic guitars, I'm not very impressed. Even for the money and all the adornments and things that make them look pretty, I'm not impressed. This thing has impressed me tremendously. Now, it was made in 2018. It was a limited edition. I don't know how many are available out there. I'm sure there's still some available brand new. I got this one as it was a blemish. It was a blem model. So I got it significantly cheaper than the $750 or so. Most people are still asking for these. A lot cheaper than that. And at the same time, I can't really find a blem. The top is not the prettiest. The spruce has got what some people call bear claw, but in the sense of this one, it's not very pretty. Maybe that's why, because it's got some lines in it that aren't pretty. There may be a little ding here or there. I can't really find one. There's nothing wrong. Action, frets, all that out of the box. Phenomenal. Too much poly. It is sprayed pretty doggone thick. How that affects the sound, I can't comment. It sounds really good. Is it as loud and resonant as, say, a real Texan from the 60s with nitro on it would be, or like a Hummingbird or a Dove or other guitars I'm familiar with? Probably not. It's probably a little more muted because of all this poly. It's pretty thick. But overall, it still sounds great. And for the money, it's got real shallow tuners. And I'm not big into artist versions of things or artist editions, but it is cool. It's got Peter's signature on the back of the headstock. Peter Frampton comes with a certificate of authenticity and that kind of thing. But it does sound very good. And I love the neck. I like those skinny necks. This one makes it so easy for me to play. It has slowly become a go-to and grab guitar. Would I record something important with it? Probably not. Not when I've got some better options. Even though I like the neck on it more than my Gibson necks because they're 172. So they're thicker. I've gotten used to them. But audio-wise, if I was to put a good condenser microphone up to it in a recording situation, I don't know. I'd probably go with Sheryl Crow Country Western. Tends to be a go-to for me. Or a Hummingbird. Those are my choices. That's my favorites for recording. A D18 or a D28, those tend to be good choices for recording for me. The older ones with 1 11/16 nuts, I don't like how everybody's getting wider. I don't understand why wider is better. Some hands prefer them. All right, let's do something that's let's try to do something a little little Frampton-y. I get my Guitar Heroes confused, don't I? And see if you can get hear a Frampton vibe just because his name's on it. Does that sound Frampton-y to you? Anyway, I still think it's a fantastic guitar. Just wanted you to know about these, and because if you're looking for a Gibson, say a J45 type guitar, and you're looking for one that's got the old 60 specs because you like thinner necks like me, your only real option, I think, is the Brad Paisley. It's no longer made, but it was for a while. They took Brad's old J45 and put a skinny 1 9/16 nut neck on it, but it rings in at what, $3,500, $3,000, and you pick up one of these, find you a blem for $5 or $6, and get you one that's in shiny brand new condition for $750. If there's any left and they're not selling, there's liable to be a blowout because once again, this is a 2018. This is not one of the new Epiphones, so it's got the shorter headstock. And I think they're pushing the longer headstocks, and they're really pushing out the new Epiphones. So you may even get a better deal than that. LR Bags, pickups in it. It's got a volume and tone control right here on the sound hole. I haven't even ever plugged this thing in. I just play it acoustically. But I do think you could find a deal if you like narrow necks, if you like thin necks like I do. This is the closest I think you can get without spending thousands and thousands on a Brad Paisley. Or there have been a few others over the last 10 years, Gibson Montana J45s, that had thinner necks that were specific to an artist that wanted that or had that on their original. And that makes things a little tough to find, and they're always quite expensive. I will say this is different from a J45, being an Epiphone Texan, 25.5 length scale. You're looking at a Fender scale here. But I always can compensate for having a little longer scale, doesn't bother me. If I've got a neck I can get my fingers around, because I do some thumb stuff. I cheat like Eric Clapton does. I've seen Frampton throw that thumb over before too. Maybe that's why he liked the thin neck. But lots of times, like in the case of John Lennon, Epiphone will release a guitar, put an artist's name on it, and nothing about the guitar is really spec-wise like the original that artist had. It just looks like it physically and has that name on it. Like the J160, John Lennon, it's nothing like John Lennon's J160. The bracing's different, everything's different about it. The neck profile's different, but it's got John Lennon's name on it. But this Frampton, they actually went and put a neck on it like Peter Frampton's neck on his old Texan. It would be the same neck that would be on the Texan that Paul McCartney played Blackbird on. It's going to be one of those thin mid to late 60s necks. I love them, and I cannot afford, there's no way on earth I could go out and find a special edition or buy a real mid 60s Gibson that's in great shape. You can find them that aren't outrageously expensive, but the strings are going to be 10 feet over the neck. It's going to need a reset if you find one that's inexpensive. When you spend real money, you get one that's ready to play, and that real money, you're talking thousands. So why not spend less? Get an Epiphone that's got that same feel. I care more about the feel. Second would be the sound it produces. Third is the bling, names, things like that. Yeah, I'm attracted to inlays and things, but I much prefer the feel of the neck. I've had some fancy looking guitars that I just could not play because there was something wrong with the shoulder or something. It just bothered my hand. My hand is weird. Not that I'm a great player by any means, but it drives my hand nuts when something is not suiting to it. And this Texan falls right in with mid-late 60s Gibsons as far as that. Now, stretch your fingers a little further because the scale length is not 24 3/4, 25.5. But these are phenomenal guitars, all solid wood. They're pretty. They could use a little less poly on them. But if you like that thin neck, you like those mid to late 60s specs, find you one of these Framptons. You'll save a ton of money over trying to go after a signature model that's got it or an original Gibson or even an original Epiphone. It's just a great guitar. It sounds good. I think it's made in Indonesia. I believe that's what we've got here. It says Epiphone, Nashville, Tennessee. And on the back here, it does say made in Indonesia. And it's a 2018 Peter Frampton. Great guitars. Great guitars. Sam Stone came home to his wife and family after serving in the conflict overseas. Go out and get you one if you like those thin necks. I'll see you next time. Stay safe, social distance, stay inside as much as possible. This thing's really gripping the nation. Deaths are rising, and we continue to pray for the great John Prine. God bless every one of you. God loves you and I love you. We'll see you next time. And remember, what keeps us all together are 6 greasy strings.